Hello folks, this video is for mentoring sessions that I had conducted in the month of November of 2021 on TypeScript for Dataverse. It's a 4-day mentoring session and the agenda for each day is on the playlist in the video's description. The playlist has videos in a sequential order, so do check that out. Now let's get into it. So welcome everybody for the second day of TypeScript for Dataverse. Today we are actually going to do some hands-on. But before we do any hands-on, I wanted to cover some of the things. Few people contacted me and asked some questions. So we'll cover those questions first, and then we'll actually dive into the hands-on of doing some TypeScripting. Okay. So the question that was asked was around webpack. Like, what does webpack means? And yesterday I forgot to actually mention what is the difference between the regular vanilla TypeScript and webpack. So thanks for asking that question, and I didn't actually answer them at that time because I thought like this is a good question for a broader audience. So webpack is actually a bundling tool that is available in the market, and webpack is not the only one. There are other tools that are available as well that bundles the TypeScript and does some tree shaking and compiles and bundles it into a JavaScript file, and it works for JavaScript as well. So if you have multiple JavaScripts, it will bundle all those JavaScripts together and then create one single bundle file. And that's what basically it does. And now I used the term tree shaking. Now what does tree shaking means? So tree shaking is nothing but it removes the unnecessary code, or we call it as dead code, from the files. So if you're using imports, we'll see some imports and exports as well during the course. So when you're doing imports and exports, so it goes and identifies those imports and then brings them into that bundle file. So then the file that you get is having all the references for all the imports, but and then that's how the bundle is created. So what it does is it would see that your file 1 is using file 2 and file 3, so it will import those file 2 and file 3 code. But let's say you have file 4 somewhere, or you have a class created somewhere but you're not using it anywhere, it will not include it in the bundling. So that code, you wrote the code but you never actually used it anywhere, and that code will be left out and it won't be part of the package. So it reduces the size of your files as well. So it smartly identifies the only things that you're using and bundles them together, and that's what webpack does. Okay, so I'm also going to show you the differences of the webpack as well. So in here I have two projects. One is vanilla TS project and the other one is the webpack TS project. In the vanilla TS project, I have TS config, which targets ES6 and then has a module common.js. And TS config on the webpack TS project also has target ES6 and module common.js. So both the TS config are exactly the same. So when you compile this vanilla project, and let me see, there is some noise coming in the background, so I'll just mute everyone. Okay, so come on, go away. So we have two TS configs, both are similar, and then I have this build command for vanilla project. So if I do build for vanilla project, it's compiling. And vanilla project is like regular TypeScript project, no webpack installed in it, and this JavaScript file, keep open, looks like this. Now I would build dev for webpack. Okay, So this, so let's go and look at how this JavaScript files turns out to be. So see how this JavaScript files looks totally different. So let me do split here. Okay, so this JavaScript file was created from the TypeScript project by using tsc build, right? And then this was created using the webpack build command. It looks totally different, right? And it has a lot of lines. So you would say, why should we use webpack? Well, the build dev is only for dev, but when you're actually going to production or even UAT instances, I would recommend to use this build command, webpack build command, and that's where all this optimization happens. And this optimization, what it does is it minifies a file. So keep an eye out on this particular file. I'm going to run the build command over here, and what it will do is it will take the same code, it will optimize the code so that your file size becomes smaller. And there you go, right? So the production command created this file, and now see, it's just one line. It's a very minimum code. The benefit of doing using webpack is what I said, is the tree shaking thing. So if you're using imports, now in this case we are not using any imports, but when we'll go to that path, when we will start using imports and start importing a lot of class files and a lot of other resources that we would be using, you will see that I'll show you how webpack is useful in that way. Okay. So any questions on webpack? So let's move on. Oh yeah, and before that I wanted to also highlight the GitHub repository. So I've created a GitHub repository. The link was in today morning's email. So this Power Maverick /mentoring is where you can go. You can see all the mentoring sessions in here. This is the first one that I'm actually having a Git repository created. So you can just click on this TypeScript for Dataverse November 2021, and you will be taken up. Oh, sorry. And then you can actually click on here, GitHub repo for this session, and you will be taken to this day one. So day one already has two projects, vanilla TS project and webpack TS project that we created yesterday. It has nothing in it. It's just basic project structure, and that's about it, because that's what we did yesterday. Today, when we would do some hands-on, then that code would go in day two, and then day 3 and day 4 would also follow as we complete those days. Okay. Let me just escape out of this. Okay, it feels good. All right, so going back to the today's thing. Today what we're going to do is we are going to do some TypeScripting and then deploy it to Dynamics or Dataverse, and then in Dataverse we're going to configure the event on the form and then see how it interacts. Yeah, so the demo is going to look like something like this. So I have a superhero entity, and then in that, this is the record. So basically what's going to happen is if I click on this show hide power stats, if it says yes, then it would show power stats, and then if I select no and I save it, it will hide the power stats. So this is what the demo would look like finally once we complete our coding today. So I select no, I hit save, and then it hides the power stats. If I select yes, I save, it will show the power stats again. So that is what our demo is going to be. Okay. So let's get started. So first thing that we want to do is we are going to first look at the plain TypeScript project, and then we are going to do the webpack project and then compare how that differentiates and how it is also similar. Like there's no difference in how you code things, but then how the output is different and how you configure is different. Okay, that's what we're going to look at. So first we'll go with plain TypeScript project. So we'll do create Dataverse TypeScript project, and we'll say TypeScript only, and that's gonna do all the npm installs. Now while it's doing npm install, you would see that it's not connected to any Dataverse environment. So we would also go and connect this to Dataverse environment in the meantime. Just going and getting the entity metadata. Now it will go and fetch all the web resources. So now it's connected to this instance of mine, and the npm install is still running, so we'll let that finish. Okay, so it finished npm install. So our project is all ready to get going. So next thing, as you know, there is nothing in the source file, so we need to add a file in the source file. Source is where all your TypeScript files is gonna be, right? So I'll right click source file and then say add Dataverse ts file. I'm gonna call it as superhero demo. Okay, so I added superhero demo as a TypeScript file. If I open this file, I get some, and this is what I showed yesterday as well, is I will see some snippets which are commented obviously, and you can uncomment them. But before you uncomment them, you can see that I'm using a form context, but that form context is grabbing something from accounts, whereas in our case we are not going to use accounts, we are going to use that superhero entity. So when you uncomment this, we'll get an error because there's no accounts existing, and this is what I was going back to, is like the types needs to be defined when you're doing anything with TypeScript. And here xrm.accounts do not exist in any of the things. So here is where I added some early bound kind of feature. So what you could do is you could go to Dataverse DevTools, and on the entities, now you can filter the entities. Let's filter it and then select TypeScript mentoring, and here's the superhero entity that we want to handle. So if you right click the superhero entity, you will see an option of saying generate typings. Now typings is it gives you the definition of the entity. So it gives you what the entity name is, it gives you all the attributes associated to entity and things like that. So it's, you know how if you have worked with CRM SVC util, and CRM SVC util gives you that definition of the account class or contact class, it's similar to that but in a TypeScript way, and that's what we are going to do. We are going to use early bound, so we have all the types defined, and that is what is called typings. And typings normally that's why I've added this folders called typings. So typings normally go in the typings folder, and it's not in the source folder. And typings are defined using the file name .d.ts. So D is like defined types. Okay, so I will go back to Dataverse DevTools. I'll right click here and I'll say generate typings. Now once you say generate typings, it will ask in which directory do you want to save your typings. So as I said, we will be saving our typings in the typings folder. So I'll select that. So it created the type definition for that entity superhero. So if I go back here, expand typings, and there is my type definition. So you'll see there is like a lot of things added in it with all the enums, all the event context. Like you don't have to worry about how this file is generated, you just have to use it, right? So how do you use it? So in superhero demo, instead of using accounts, now you'll say it's superhero. Okay, so that's the form context. So now form context is of type superhero. Yeah, and then what we have used is in package.json, we have used this this one, xrm types. So xrm types is a library created by community where it allows you to use form context. So form context is actually coming from, so this XRM is actually been defined in that typings. So this typings is coming from that types XRM, and that's where all these XRM types are defined, and you can go and look at all the code if you want to, if you're interested. But this is again the type definition file that we were talking about, but specifically for that XRM. So if you go to XRM types, so this is where the npm package is, and the GitHub repository is over here. So in here you have to go to types, and inside types you can go to XRM, and you can actually, sometimes if you are not sure what to use, what not to use, you can also see XRM tests, which has a lot of these test cases available for you. Like let's say you want to see how to get a subgrade, so you can do subgrade, and you can see how you can return a subgrade, how you can interact with grades, right? If you want to do tabs, so find tabs, and you can see how to interact with tabs. So there are a lot of test cases on this file as well. So I'm going to paste this link in the chat. Okay, so those are all the that's what I've used in the package as well, is I've relied on XRM types, but I've added few more things so that we can get that early bound kind of fill to it. So why I had to do that is because now if you go to form context, so let's uncomment this, right? So form context, you get this form context, and then you assign it to the static form context that we have defined at the global level, and this is on the load method, right? So in the load method, that's what we would do. We would just have the load method. We will get the form context defined from the execution context. Now we would go and define on save method. Yeah, and now remember that prettier thing that I was talking about earlier. So now when I'm typing, if I do save here, it automatically formats my code, even if I have multiple spaces here. And if I do save, it will go and format the code for me. That's happening because of those settings that I described yesterday. And then the prettier JSON config file is already existing in the project. So that's already configured for you. You can go and change the settings. So let's say we said prettier.json, the tab width is going to be 10, and I save it, right? If I go and save this again, it's going to put the tab space at 10. You see how it moved, right? But I don't like it to be 10. I'll put it as 4. And I need to reload it again, I guess. Save, and then it went back to, and then let's put this. So yeah, so see how it controls the tab space and whatnot. So those are the cool things about using prettier and using ESLint. ESLint, I'll show how those gets identified as well. So on save, if you remember the demo, what we have to do is we have to capture the that variable. Let me go back. So this show hide power stats variable, and then capture the value of this. If the value is yes, then show power stats. If the value is no, then hide the power stats, right? Simple. So that's what we are going to do here. So here we are going to do let. So anything, so if you're coming from the JavaScript background, anything that you define, you would always start with where, right? You would That's how JavaScript works. All the variables are always where. In here, in TypeScript, you can use let command nowadays in the newer JavaScripts, but in TypeScript, you most of the time you would use let. Let is the command, and then you would put your variable name. So show hide power stats. Okay, and then you do this colon, and then after the colon you would be giving the type of the variable, whether it is a number, whether it is a string, whether it is a boolean. So in this case it's going to be boolean, because that field, yes no field, provides us the boolean return, right? So boolean, and then equal to, then you would do form context. So form context, and see how easy it becomes, because now everything is so defined. You get this nice IntelliSense and it just works nicely, right? So form context dot get attributes, get attribute, and now if you open the open the brackets and do double quotes, you will get list of all the variables that are associated to superhero only. Okay, so you can see these are all the variables that are available to superhero, and that's happening because we typecasted form context into that superhero. Okay, and then we added this typing. That's the reason you're getting this IntelliSense in here. So that name was show hide. So now show hide power stats, and this is a get attribute, and then we'll do get value. And this is happening because of the combination of XRM types, that package that I just said, XRM types, and the typing that we added. So the combination of both gives you complete IntelliSense in TypeScript. Okay, so now we save it. So now we got this show hide power stats value. Second thing we would be doing is we would be going and capturing the tab, right? So this tab, because I need to go to this section, and the way you go to the section, as you know, in JavaScript, is you capture the tab, then go to the section. So that's what we are going to do here. So we are going to do let tab general is equal to form context. What is it? .ui tabs. Let me put everyone on mute again. If anyone is joining late, make sure that you go on mute, please. Thank you. Okay, so tabs, and then you give the tab name. In my case it is tab underscore general dot get. Yeah, so we got the tab, right? And again, if you are having difficulty of identifying what exactly this code is going to be, you can always go back here and then say how they are doing. You can see how they are doing it, right? And you'll see a lot of this these things here: get tab name, then you can do events as well, right? So you get a lot of this examples in here itself. Then second is get the section. So section, what is the section? Power stats. Then you do tab general dot sections dot get, and then the section name is, let me just copy the section name. So that's my section name. Yeah, now remember, again, another good thing about Prettier is adding the semicolon. So if you didn't observe it, I can show you again what happened. So Control X. Now I don't have semicolon here, and what I've copied is, if I open my notepad, okay, let me bring my notepad here. Okay, so I've not copied the semicolon, right? Semicolon is not part of my a copied statement. If I just copy this and paste it, it added the semicolon automatically for you. So those are the some cool features that Prettier has. So that's why I love Prettier. It just makes things so much easier to code and fast, right? It just looks very neat. So now I've got the power stats section as well. What I have to do with that power stats section is I have to show or hide based on this value, and this is already a boolean value, so I can just do section power stats dot set visible, and I can just say show hide ps. Now set visible is expecting, so if you see the definition, it is expecting a boolean, and show hide is of type boolean. That's why it is able to get this. If I might have defined this as number, it will prompt me an error, right? And the error is shown over here, like argument of type number is not assignable. That's because TypeScript works on the defined types itself. So each and every method is expecting a type. Each and every so let me go back here and then say bool. Each and every method even returns a type as well. So you can see here that get method of section is returning a section, right? xrm.controls.section. And if you go over here, you'll see that now we have not provided the type here in the let command, but it automatically captured and provided the type here called section, just because the return type from the method was that section, xrm.controls.section, and it got that type here. Yeah, cool. So let's save it and let's compile it. And sometimes if npm scripts don't show up here, what you have to do is you just have to open package.json. It's one of the things that sometimes it doesn't show up. I'll always like to use npm scripts from here rather than typing the commands. Makes things easier. So I'll do a build. While it's building, let me see if there are any questions. Okay, no questions so far. Yeah, if you have any questions, drop it in the chat window and I'll get to them. Okay, so now we have built our file. Let's just open it just for fun, right? We don't need to, but just for fun, let's see what has happened. So as you can see, it gives superhero demo as the class name, and then superhero demo.onload, superhero demo.onsave, and then it's returning this superhero demo back to the this variable, right? So this is what you have to keep in mind is now whenever you're using it, you have to use superhero demo because that's the variable, and then onload, right? That's how your functions are going to be. So let's go and deploy this JavaScript. So we are already connected to this instance. So let's deploy this, and let me see if my solution already has a web resource file. It already has a web resource file, superhero demo.js. I'm gonna just utilize the same one. So I'm gonna do control upload web resource, and then now it gives you an option like whether you want to create it as a new web resource or link to an existing web resource. Now, as I said, I already had a web resource demo web resource that I want to link it to, so I can just use link to existing web resource, and now it will provide me with all the options, and then superhero demo.js, as I said, exist here, superhero demo.js. So I'm going to select superhero demo.js. Yeah, so now it's going and uploading the web resource. This web resource is getting uploaded over here, and let's go and look at if it got updated or not. So yeah, See, it's now updated with the code. I'll just publish it for sake. There's one issue that I know is existing in the tool right now. It doesn't do publish, so there is something that I have to work upon. While it's publishing, we'll have to wait. And okay, so tables, superhero, forms. Okay, the publish succeeded. And this is the main form. I'll go and edit the main form. And I will be adding the it's already added here, so good thing. Superhero demo JS is already added as a library, so I'll just go and add them on the event. So first thing is onload event, and the function is going to be, if you go back to here, it's going to be a class name dot onload, and you pass in the execution context, and it's done. The event handler will be superhero demo dot on save. Don't have to pass the execution context because this is not, we have not configured it that way, right? We are capturing it in the onload and then saving it on the global state. You save it, and we'll have to wait again for the publish to complete. While it's publishing, I'll answer some of the questions. So how is npm script window is visible in VS Code? This is how my VS Code workspace looks. So Dinesh Kumar had asked how does npm script shows up, and as I said before, npm script, when you configure the project first time, npm script doesn't show up because it's not able to identify whether package.json exists on that location, because when you open the location, nothing existed. So that's one of the workaround, is go and just click on package.json, and as soon as the package.json opens up, the npm script will start showing up, and then you can close the package.json. It's just one time thing that you have to do when you create a project, a new project. That's how VS Code works, right? It's not able to identify when you create stuff. Second question is from Mohan. Mail is missing in my mailbox, so could you please post GitHub URL of demo code? Yes, I sure will. So the URL is in the chat now. Oh, and yeah, Lee already posted the link as well, so thank you, Lee. Cool. So going back to our form here, and form was published, so everything should be fine. So we'll just go here and reload the form and see if the code works or not. Okay, so now I say no and save, and it got hidden, right? If I say yes, save, it shows up. That means our code is sorry, that means our code is running. And then let's go and just review the code one more time, what we have done, right? So we created a class called superhero demo, we added an onload method, we added an onsave method, and this was for a plain TypeScript project. And then we compiled it, we deployed it. Pretty simple. And we created the typings, and typings is what we have used in our code. Any questions so far? Is there a way to show and hide without the save? Oh yeah, you can do a save, or you can do without a save. That's all JavaScript basics, right? It's just that we are doing it through TypeScript now. So instead of tying that method on save, I could have done it on this event, on change of this show hide power stats. You can do same thing, right? So We can do it when I'm working with the webpack. I'll register it on change instead of on save. We'll do that. Good. So that's with the plain TypeScript. Now we will see how it looks different in when we are doing webpack. Okay. So in the webpack, we'll go here. We'll do create Dataverse TypeScript project. We'll do webpack. Now here it asks for namespace. Remember that, right? So in my namespace, I will do PMAV. Okay, it's doing the npm install. And while it's doing the npm install, I can still go ahead and create a file here. So add Dataverse TypeScript file, and it will ask me for name. So I will do superhero demo. Same thing, because I'm going to override the same file again, but this time with using webpack. Okay, so my source file is added. As you can see, it looks exactly the same. Except it has export command added to it, and that's because that's how webpack works. Webpack only looks at whatever is exported and only packages that in the bundling. So whenever it does the bundling, it only looks at whatever is exported, right? Yeah, it's giving me an error. That's because the npm install was not completed. If I try to close and reopen this again, it should go away. So why is it not going away? Fresh. Types. XRM types already exist here, so it should not have thrown me an error. Probably I created file before npm got installed, that's why. So let me add the file again. Superhero demo. Okay. Let's see. Let's just do a compilation, and again, so to Mohan's point, not Mohan, but I think it was Dinesh Kumar, say the npm script is not showing up here. So if I open package.json, it will do this activation of the extension, and npm script will start showing up here. Now you can go and close your package.json. So let's do a compile just to make sure that everything is good with superhero demo. Okay, yeah, it was successful. There was no issues with it. I don't know for what some reason it's throwing an error here. Probably I tried to do a little faster some of the things, so maybe that's why. Okay, so same thing we're going to do in the typings as well. Go to Dataverse DevTools, connect to this instance, and then filter and generate the typings in the typings folder. Typings exist, and now if I use the same thing, right? Same thing over again, and I'll just copy the code from the previous one, so we save some time. But instead of on save, I'll do on change. Okay, change. So now my TypeScript looks exactly the same, except it has this export statement associated to it. But let's go and compile this. There's one small detail that is important when you're working with Webpack. Webpack, if you remember, when we initialized the Webpack, we provided that namespace to it. and that namespace is what is important. That is a key piece. So in your webpack config, if you go to webpack config, you will see that our namespace is under this output library attribute, which is called pmav, power maverick. So pmav, that's my namespace. So whenever I deploy this code, so it's completed, right? So let's go and deploy this code, JavaScript, and then upload. Now instead of this, I can also go to Dataverse tables and I can do smart match, and let's close this, and now it's able to match to that superhero demo.js, right? And then I can do this link and I can upload. Okay, so it's uploaded. Okay, and if I go back here and open web resource, yeah, see, updated, right, with the webpack thing. Yeah, and let's go and publish this as well. While it's publishing, we had events registered on the form. So going back on the form, not that tree structure, and we had 2 events. So we are going to remove the on save event now because we're going to change it to on change, right? So we'll remove that. But onload had this superhero demo.onload, right? That won't work. So let's just skip it and see. We'll see an error. So this published will keep that same. I just remove the on save one. That's it, right? This onload one is still the same. I'll do the publish. And let's refresh this. Now as soon as you refresh, you should see an error. Reason is because it's missing that namespace. And there you go, right? You saw the error. So if you go to detail, it will say it was not able to find this method in the JavaScript. And that's obvious because we compiled it with Webpack and we provided that namespace. Whenever you provide a namespace, you have to, so your definition of your method would change to your namespace. So that will be, in my case, it will be pmav dot, then your class name, which will be superhero demo dot onload. That's how it's going to be, right? So going back on the form, we'll be changing this, and then we'll do pmav dot superhero demo dot onload. Now I'll also get back to the reason why this is good as well, and some of the use cases that comes out of this as well once we fix the issue. So now publish. Now if I reload again, now there is no error. Yeah, cool. So next thing we want to, but it won't work because we don't have the on change event. So let's go and add that on change event as well. So event handler, same pmav dot class name, and then on change. Save, publish. And let's do a refresh here. Okay, so now no, and there you go, right? It's working on the on change instead of on save. Same thing, you're just changing where it gets binded to, and that's it. Any questions on this one? Okay, So now, why are we doing namespaces? So namespaces provides an easy understanding. Like if you're writing plugins, if you're coming from C# background, if you're writing plugins, you normally do this namespaces. For example, if I'm doing namespace, if I'm creating a project, I'll do Maverick dot crm dot whatever, like plugins, or Maverick dot crm dot custom API, those kind of things, right? So we are already doing it on the plugin side. Why not do it on the TypeScript side as well? Because that way you would be able to understand, where is this event coming from? Is it coming from, like, let's say on a project you have two different companies working on the same instance, or even different instances, but on production when it goes, it would be the same instance and two different companies are working on it. So you would want to identify which company has done what work. So using namespace is a great way of identifying where did it come from. Also, one of the scenario is, let's say you have two teams working on the same Dynamics instance that's going to land in production, and one is working on the sales side and the other one is working on the services, customer service side. Both teams, we want to use, let's say, Contoso as an example. So both teams are Contoso, and you want to use that Contoso namespace. So let's say our Contoso namespace is going to be CONT, right? But we still want to distinguish what is coming from sales and what is coming from customer service side. Namespace can also have multiple layers on it. So Contoso, when you define in the library CONT, so that way our path will become CONT dot superhero demo dot on change. Now if you want to add one more layer to it, you just have to do comma and say sales. So now what would happen is, it would go from CONT dot sales dot superhero demo dot on change. So now you can also distinguish the groups that are working if you want to. So there are a lot of flexibility that you get when you're using webpack config, and you don't have to define that in the source. Like you don't have to define that hierarchy in the source, you just have to define it in the config folder. And those are some of the benefits of using webpack config. Like easily you can remove, let's say you were using this but then you changed your mind, you want to remove this and then go with, let's say, DV, right? So those are the kind of things that helps, like just by setting configuration, it helps the generated JavaScript files without changing any of the code, which is not available in tsconfig yet. So those are the benefits of using webpack config. And now how people configure it, you can always see that. So if you go to Benedict's blog that I had shared yesterday, I can share it. He has used, I'm going to share the link here again. So he has used functions instead of classes and configured the library in a way where functions are also used as names, like in one of the path of the namespace. Whereas if you go and check Scott Duro's blog, I'm going to paste that link here as well, then Scott has used classes instead. So there are a lot of configuration that you can do with webpack, and each one of them does it differently. Whatever I've provided here is something that I connected with Benedict and Scott, and then that's how we, like, that inputs from the community is what I took, and then that's how I defined my project. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. You can always change it however you want it to be. Okay, so any questions? I can open up the mic if you want to ask the questions instead of typing. So yeah, that was it. So if there are any questions, I'll like to answer them. That's why I'm doing this session on a smaller scale, so we can get the questions answered if you have any. So feel free to unmute yourself and then ask questions. Or if you don't want to ask questions, you can also type it in.
For all the production environment, we'll use the webpack one only, right?
Yes, yeah. So the beauty of using, and good question, Mohan, the beauty of using this npm or this package.json, this becomes your npm scripts. So instead of, so I can do npm run build dev. So this build dev is actually the name of the script, and if I run this, it will run the same thing that this npm script is running. The good thing about that is now I can use the same npm run command in my pipelines, in my CI/CD pipelines as well. So then what you could do is in your pipelines, if you're doing the dev, you can use build dev, but then on production pipeline you can do build
Okay.
instead.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Any other questions? I'll wait for another minute if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, we can wrap up this call. I see someone typing in.
For PCF controls also, we'll use the same thing, right? These TypeScripts, and we can do our own custom controls.
Yes, yes. And for PCF, I also had conducted similar trainings in past. So if you go to my YouTube channel, you can see those trainings as well.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Danish.
Yeah, cool. Seems like there are no further questions, so we can end this call, and we'll connect tomorrow. I will send the synopsis again as I did today. You'll see the synopsis tomorrow morning, and yeah, tomorrow we'll go deeper into TypeScript of how you handle some of the things like arrays and whatnot. So we'll go into more detailed. Today was just how you write simple TypeScript and then deploy it, right? That was the intention. Tomorrow we're gonna do little more in depth into what TypeScript is. And thank you all.